So I was not eager to really understand. Like I wasn't eager to recommend it, and I also didn't understand exactly why everyone was like, "Oh my God, this is definitely the book to read this year." I was like, "There are other books to read this year. You can read this book, and I will recommend that."
Cat. Everyone, it's Stephanie.
It's Emily.
And today we are doing top overhyped books that we have accumulated the past year or 2 years that we think have been completely overhyped, and when we read it, we were very underwhelmed. So I picked about 4 different books, and you picked 3. Yeah. So we're going to just discuss them today, give you a brief overview of why we think they were underwhelming as opposed to how it was, portrayed as overhyped. My first book that I thought was very underwhelming was, we talked about this before already, and I don't want to keep talking about it, about how much neither of us like it, but the first book I'm going to pick is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. It was one of the top books of last year. Like, I was actually looking at the other book reviews, like videos this morning, and everyone was like, I love this book, it was so beautifully written, blah blah blah, and I'm just like, no. So like, I'm not gonna go too much into detail about why neither of us really like it, because we both read it, because we talked about it in a different book, which I will link so you can check that out. But yeah, I thought it won some like audiobook award, and we were just very disappointed.
I think it also won the Man Booker Prize.
Something. It won multiple awards, and so we were like, oh, we should totally like read it. And I had picked it as one of my books to read for one of my reading challenges this year, and I was very underwhelmed by it.
So my pick, this first pick, is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This book came out a while ago, probably about like 3 years ago, and it's an ongoing series. The author herself has actually been touted as the next J.K. Rowling when she first came to her debut, and the series kind of is more of like the mystical fantasy version, where like it's about an underground London and this fantastically futuristic world, and the main character is a clairvoyant, and she's not allowed to be mystical, and so it kind of follows this typical like dystopian fantasy cliche.
Okay.
And I had a really hard time reading this book because it was weirdly for me a mild YA version of kind of 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, really?
With fantasy. Yeah, I felt like the relationship between the main character and her dominating, I guess, like owner or whatever, because she gets captured in the story, and then it kind of goes from there. Author had a tendency to world build, like in her world building, she would info dump a lot, and I'm not exactly the biggest fan of that.
Like too much detail.
Yeah, it's a lot of I understand fantasy has that tendency, and it's hard, really, even in sci-fi too, to build a world and have it be coherent to the readers immediately,
right, and not be too confusing.
Yeah. And so
that is hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. So I wouldn't necessarily say that people who are interested in fantasy should avoid the book, but I definitely found it overhyped. I did not think it was really worth all the attention that it was given, just because, one, it was by a duet author who also was one of those who was like right out of college, yay, she's a brilliant writer.
The thing about it is, I feel like it's a psychological thing too, because when it's overhyped, you're kind of like, oh, you have these great expectations. Yeah. And now that you're telling me it's like not that good, I'm like, okay, well, I'm still gonna read it because it's on my TBR, but now I will go in with like lower expectations, and maybe I'll come out with like, oh, this is actually a great book.
Yeah, that's good.
So the next one I'm gonna pick is actually a series called the Blueblood series by Melissa de la CRUZ. CRUZ. So it's a series that was written about this. I believe there's 7 books from 2007 to 2013, and I just finished the last one like a year or 2 ago. So I decided to put them on the list because I thought these books were very overhyped. I think it was very hyped up in the first 2-3 books, and then started to lose its hype as like the series progressed, which made sense because so basically the series is about vampires who somehow were actually like angels reincarnated, and they were immortal because they had these like life cycles, and then once they died, somehow they're able to preserve their like essence and moved on to like a different body, like a different like a baby. So they just like have these like life cycles, and that's how they're immortal. And it was just very confusing because the whole vampire aspect versus like the angels element, and how their original forms were like Gabriel or Michael or a lot of like the famous like archangels in the Bible and whatnot. So it was a very like, I feel like the premise was very interesting, but I thought the execution of the books were not. And because it was so overhyped in the first like 2-3 books, I went in and I enjoyed it, but then as the series progressed, I was kind of like, it's dragging. Then I think that's a problem with books that are more than like 2-3 books, because the author starts to, they don't really know how to continue anymore, I feel like. And I was very disappointed, and towards the end I was just like, this book is so slow, I'm like, I don't know what's going on, it's so draggy, it's so laggy. And I mean, I finished it because I felt like for myself I had to finish the series, because I was like, if I'm going to read this book, I'm going to finish the freaking series. But I was just very underwhelmed overall.
So the next book that I found a bit overhyped was Opening Bell by MAUREEN. It's actually one of Reese Witherspoon's like next big move after like Gone Girl, because she has this like production company, and she like picked up this book as like the book rights about a while ago, and it's going to turn into a movie, and it's basically a chick flick that concentrates on women on Wall Street. And for me, it sparked a certain interest initially because I actually came out of a business school with like finance and marketing, and I have some idea of some of the atmosphere there. So when I came into reading it, I was like, yeah, okay, so it's like kind of like Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, that makes kind of sense. And as I engaged more and more with the story, though, I found that the character was, again, very stereotypical. So I just felt like on edge every time when I was reading about it, because she would talk about, oh, I'm a mother, oh, I have a wife, I like support my husband who has like such a low paying job. And I understand that it's kind of like a flip of the usual role of like women and men, but I feel like the author focused way too much on that and didn't really go too well into like character building to make her protagonist really stand out among like the usual chiclets. And her angle is one that I've heard way too many times to feel like I was super interested in. So unlike I guess like a previous pick of Reese Witherspoon's is like Gone Girl, right, where like Amy Dunn was a very like nuanced and very like out there kind of character that picked up like the psychopathic like villain role, a scorned woman role in a very in a new angle. With this particular character, she kind of fell flat near the end, and I don't really know what to make of her after reading it all. I was like, okay, so you wanted to change your life, yada yada yada, like it's like the same idea as like Devil Wears Prada, but yeah, I think that's the whole problem with me picking up chiclets in general.
So my next pick is still very hyped up right now. It's called, and I've talked about this book before in a previous video, so you can check out for more details there. But it is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. It came out with a new cover. Did you know that? Like the graphic cover instead of like the original cover. So I thought it was, yeah, I don't know, like the first book that she wrote, Fangirl, which was great, I loved it, and then she wrote kind of a spin-off version, which is Carry On, and I did not like it at all. I'm not going to delve into too much detail. I thought this book was way overhyped, too much attention that was unnecessary. I think a lot of attention dealt from Fangirl, which I think which was good and great. It was a great book, but because of that book was so good, this book just felt so underwhelming that it just didn't live up to its expectations.
My last pick for this video, the reason why I'm kind of chuckling, because I can imagine thousands of people hating on me right now because it's such a heated book at the moment, is Darkest Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I will get you a copy one day, I promise. But Yeah, so for me, everyone seemed to be really recommending.
You only read the first book, right?
I only read the first book. I'm not going to say that, but the thing is, I generally read the first book, and if it disappoints me, I'm not really that eager to read the rest. Okay. So I am only judging the first book, so don't hate me on all the other ones. But so for me, when I was reading the book, I actually liked it at first. I thought like the premise was really interesting. I felt like it was a new take on like a lot of high fantasy. And yeah, so it's basically about like all these different Londons, parallel universes, and then how only two people in the entire like universe of all universes are able to like travel amongst like all four. And I thought that was really, really new of a concept for me. But as I went deeper and deeper into the story, I could really see a lot of the usual fantasy tropes coming out. And I had a hard time dealing with it because the whole conflict of the story was very much like, for me, a little bit like Lord of the Rings. For me, a darker shade of magic just wasn't really worth all the attention that I was given, because I felt that if you wanted similar experience, you could just have reread Lord of the Rings.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's not like a YA origin?
Okay, I can give you that. I'll give you that. I'll be like, it's a abridged version. Okay. You know, it's a more cut down version of Lord of the Rings, as well as I guess a little bit of like Harry Potter, or I mean Harry Potter takes away from a lot of things too, but yeah, or like Golden Compass. There's a lot of things that go into it, and it's such a mesh. And I'm okay with things being a mixture of other things, as long as it was more original. And I just didn't really get it out of this first book of the series. Now, whether or not like whenever I get a chance, as well as Stephanie gets a chance to read like further on in the series, perhaps I'll change my mind, because writers improve, you know.
Right. But usually the first book is like the most important one. Yeah. It's usually the best one.
Yeah, and everyone likes
usually
it.
like how many books are in this series? Is it 2? 3.
Yeah,
so usually the second one is always like, from my experience for trilogies, the second novel is always like kind of a world building to the third novel. It's always kind of like it's like high book and then low book and then high book again. So if this one is like not so high for you, the second book is not going to be high for you, in my opinion. The last book I have picked out is actually also on her list as well. It's called, and I'm sure everyone's going to hate me for this. Actually, no, not many people hate me for this. I think a lot of people are in this agreement with me. Divergent series by Veronica Roth. I thought the first book was great, and then it just died from there. And I feel like the second book was like, it's okay. The third book just completely, I was just like, the ending, oh my goodness, that ending? You read the whole series, right? Yeah. And then like, I felt like it was overhyped to the point that, I mean, they made a movie out of it, and it was actually, and the funny thing is the movie bombed. Because the third book that they're trying to do, they did like part A, and then for part B, the part 2 or whatever, they're doing a TV series or something like that, because she doesn't want to play Triss anymore. Yeah. And I was like, this goes to show how overhyped it was. And I think the studio, like movie producers, realized like they should not. I should not have picked this book, but.
I think, in general, a lot of the overhyped books we've mentioned really trails along the success of like Hunger Games, as well as Harry Potter, and
Lord of the Rings.
This is ancient history, but the most overhyped series in the whole wide world, Twilight. Oh, sorry. I did not enjoy that series whatsoever. But yeah, because like the fact that Divergent even got the attention it did, you have to read it in context. It was in that sort of like atmosphere at the time. Right. And so I give credit to Veronica Roth for finishing a book while she's in college. That is not an easy thing to do. Good for you. But I did not feel like most of what she wrote was really worth anyone's efforts to read it. You know, like I found that a lot of her writing I felt like it was like her 15th draft, and she should have like had her 50th.
Polished it more.
Yeah, like her publisher should have told her to polish it. Like I don't think it really was just her. Like I'm not putting all the blame on her, although she's an easy target because
she's the author.
She's a star,
Yeah.
But I understand that it was a lot. There was a lot of business involved, and so like for me, the overall writing was it was actually pretty succinct. I thought it was really easy to read, so I understand why you liked it. I did not
the first book, not the last one.
Okay, I mean overall. So Veronica is a pretty good writer. On that effort, like she's very good with like the tools of the game, so like words, diction. I say in terms of world building, Divergent, given that it was her first real big hit in a real series ever, it was really lacking for me.
What I can say is that the premise was very interesting. Like I think when Veronica thought of the whole series, the fact that this is a dystopian world, but reality is not. I mean, it is a dystopian world, but like they're just a little like experiment for a bigger picture. So I think that premise itself is quite interesting, but like I think the way how she executed it was not the greatest. She lacked, like you said, world building. Some of the character development wasn't done that great as well. So because of that, I think that's why like you really like, nah, I don't like this book.
Well, I also didn't like it because I felt it was extremely overhyped. Yeah, like it was like everyone was saying this is like the book to read, and there was. And it was also along the lines when, like, publishing was always throwing out books of that kind of caliber. And I was just generally a little annoyed at everyone.
Yeah, that's
true. So for me, I felt like Divergent in general, the story itself did not really tell a tale that would hold for very long, as you could definitely see in terms of the movie. It was really hard to adapt. And when we talk about in our videos when we talk about book versus movies, I think especially with like Never Let Me Go, I talked about a little bit about how like the book has to be like so enriching for the movie to even like be worth watching, right? Because the movie is going to just take like little sprinkles of the book. So if you don't have like a good enough content, like actual real cake in the story, then the movie itself is going to be extremely bare bones.
But I think like the reason why the movie was still okay was, I mean, I liked the first two movies actually for Divergent, but I think that was because of like the effects. Like with the technology now, like everything is like super like clear, and like you can kind of like see everything that's happening as opposed to like a book where you just have to imagine it yourself. So because of that, I think like it did definitely do a little better in my opinion. But then the last book or last movie, I was just like, I don't know.
I didn't bother watching.
You didn't watch it? Okay.
Yeah, I felt that Veronica Roth was definitely stretching her limits with their book. I think she generally had thought out everything maybe up to like 1.5 books.
No, I think she thought it out, but she just didn't really like. It's like she thought of the big picture, but then when she did like her little outlines, for each book, she kind of like stopped at this like the second book.
Oh.
And then she was like, yeah, like I already know how to write the first two. Like I can just whiz through the third book, and I think she didn't have that like good like foundation to do that, so that's why the third book just failed.
I mean, like granted, to also give Veronica Roth some credit. I feel like most authors though near like the later parts, like most of the time the first few books are always really great, and then last few books they're just kind of slack.
They're just like
Harry Potter suffers from this too, so don't worry. Don't worry, Veronica.
All right. Well, anyway, that's all we have for today for our top overhyped books that we thought were received way too much attention that they really deserved. So yeah, I think that's it. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video below, and comment below if you agree with any of our picks today, and if you have anything else. I know there's a lot of other like really hyped up books recently, like ROWELL and like the Cinder series, but I haven't read them, and I don't think she has either. So until we read them, we can't tell you if they're overhyped or not. But yeah, we'll definitely listen to your comments if you have any below. But yeah, that's it for today, everyone.
Yep. See you guys.
Bye.